The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with my wayward co-host. She's been gone for a while, former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. On Tuesday, April 6th, Oshkosh voters will be going to the polls and will be electing 3 people to the Oshkosh Common Council. 2 of those seats are being sought by incumbents Paul Esslinger and Frank Tower. The 3rd seat is an open seat as it's being vacated by current councilman and Mayor Stephen Hentz. That seat will be filled either by newcomer Burke Tower or another newcomer, our guest on this edition, Joe Jungwirth.
Very nice to be here.
Thank you very much for being here and joining us tonight. Why don't we start, Joe, by you telling us and the viewers a little bit about yourself, what your background is, and why you're running for the Oshkosh Common Council.
I can do that. I am happily married. If you ask my wife, she might have a different answer to that. We have 3 children, Austin, Kelly, and Jacob. Lifelong resident in Oshkosh, 32 years. I am running for the City Council because I truly believe that I can make a difference in this city. Like my father before me, I am for the working man. I really look at their needs, you know what I mean? Not necessarily more than anyone else's, but I mean that's who puts us, you know, that's what this whole world's, you know, about, the working man. Mm-hmm. And I think they do need a voice, you know, for someone on the City Council. And also looking out for the best interests in the city. I mean, there's an awful lot of issues, a lot of issues coming up, budget-wise especially, coming up in the next couple of years and years to come. And I just think that I would be an asset to this city as a council member.
Now, you had mentioned your father. There may be an awful lot of folks out there who don't know. Your father is Bob Jungwirth, who for a number of years served on the City Council, served as mayor. When you were on the council, as a matter of fact.
1 year as mayor.
1 year as mayor.
Yeah.
And then we were dethroned.
Yes. Ousted.
Rocked. Yes.
Well, what, if anything, have you learned from your father about being a public servant, a good public servant? Because, frankly, I don't think we have a lot of good public servants these days.
Well, that's a great question. And when people ask me that, one thing comes to mind. I don't know why, but it does. When we were living on Rosalia Street, and Dad was just on, you know, I don't know, his first year or something like that, as a council member, we got a phone call, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know who was on the other line, and what the phone call was about was somebody's grass being too long. Neighbor's grass was too long, and it just wasn't good. Uh-huh. And I remember the look on my father's face when he hung that phone up, and it was bittersweet. But you know what? That's, you know, when you live in the city, and now the city's much bigger than what it was when he was on there. You got a whole diverse crowd of people, and everyone feels that their, you know, that their problem, you know, is number one. And you know what? As a council person, you've got to put their issue number one when they call. You've got to drop everything and you've got to, you know, you're their ears, and their voice, and that's what you have to do.
And you're prepared to do that?
Absolutely, 100%.
How do you juggle that, though? I just, we want to get into some other things, but
Sure.
you brought it up. How do you prioritize? How do you juggle and still make everyone feel like their priority, their issue is number one on your list?
Well, I'm sure it's tough. You know what I mean? You've got to juggle it. I've seen my father was on the council for 10 years. I've got a wife and 3 kids. Our children are 3, 7, and 10. And, they're going to school, and we've got this. I work full-time. My wife works full-time, but definitely be available and, at nights and during the day and whatever. You just got to... You got to take things in stride. I think these people do know. I mean that they know what it's. You've got a life too, and that.
Sure.
But I don't mind talking about it in the grocery store. I decided about a year ago that I was going to run just prior to the last election. That I wanted to run for city council, and so it's been out there. People have known it for quite some time. So I do get stopped sometimes,
Sure.
and because my father was Bob Jungwirth and on the council for 10 years, they stop you anyway, whether
Sure.
how you want to
Sure.
do it or not.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
doesn't matter. But you know what? I enjoy that. At least, right now, you know what I mean? In this time, I do enjoy listening to people because it's amazing what you can learn. What you can learn by people just coming up from all walks of life that have all different concerns. And you just go, wow, wow, yeah, that's a good point, and you got to take it in stride, and you got to fit it in. But as a public servant, I work for a local a beverage company in town here, and I'm in the city of Oshkosh 24 hours a day. So, I'm sure I'll get stopped grocery store on my way to the
guarantee it, Joe.
restroom. That's right, Melanie, you would know too.
I can guarantee it.
I look forward to that, and I'm definitely up for the challenge.
Okay, great. Before we get to the issues that are facing the city and that you will be faced with if you're elected to the council in 2 months, we want to get to something that's rather unpleasant. And just so the audience knows, we're not sandbagging Joe Jungwirth here at all. Joe is the one who actually approached us and said that he wanted to get these things out. And so we're going to discuss some rather unpleasant things, but he wants to talk about them. So let's talk about them. In the past, you've been convicted of writing some hot checks. There have been a few city ordinance violations that have been prosecuted, and I believe operating a vehicle after suspension or revocation. And I know you've also told me that you've had some civil issues,
Sure.
money and that kind of thing, and frankly, I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about that. I think everyone has money issues at one time or another
Hello.
that,
Yeah.
that people can relate to. But as far as these criminal prosecutions, and the civil thing by the city. Joe, what do you want the people in the city of Oshkosh to know about those issues?
Well, let me tell you, I've the issuing the worthless checks is about 7 years ago, and I was going through some hard times in my life, but nothing. I'm so embarrassed. I am today. Of what what I did. I didn't think about my future. I didn't. Very irresponsible, very immature, but I did it. I take full responsibility for my actions, and I've got no one else to blame but myself. I do not. Like I said, I'm embarrassed about it, but I've come so far from that time, and I guess that's the real jolt that I get. When I took out my nomination papers and handed them in, if you think for 1 second, I didn't think that this was going to come up one way, shape, or form. But you know what? I do believe that it is my responsibility to let the voters know of this city of the things that I've done. I mean, I'm not proud of them. I'm not proud of them, and I made mistakes, but I've learned from those mistakes, and I think that's the big key for me, is that I I did it. I mean, I wish it could all just, go away, but it doesn't.
Sure.
I've got to take responsibility for that, and that is not the person that I am today. I was a very lost soul at that time, and you know what? Sitting here before you two right now, running for the city council, is I love it. You know what I mean? It's just one more step in my life that I'm happy. If you would have asked me 7 years ago, even with my father on the council, you're going to do that? No way. Give me up. No. But, and that's how I felt at the time. But it's just amazing. The things that that I did 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, and you look back at them and go, oh my God, what were you thinking? And I
we've
wasn't
all been
thinking.
there.
And you know what? I'll tell you, I remember this as if it was yesterday. My father sat me down at the kitchen table at his house, and he said, this is going to affect you for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? This is going to affect you. And, deaf ears, and it just didn't care at the time, to be perfectly honest with you. I didn't, had no looking out for my future or anything, and boy, have things changed.
Well, I'm really impressed. I mean, I have to tell you, if people started calculating all the stupid things that I ever did,
I got a list right here.
I was just going to say, and you know what? They don't all. The terrible thing about this is that the stupid things that you do in your life, they don't all show up on a roster like this.
Sure.
I mean, there are things that you've done in your life, and I'm not speaking of you. I mean, you collectively as people, including myself, that you hurt other people, that you're ashamed of, that you've done. And I'm certainly right in there. I really have to tell you, Joe, you're looking us right in the eye.
Absolutely.
You're taking responsibility. I'm very impressed with that. Most people would say, well, there was extenuating circumstances, and give that whole political spin. I think that anyone who can sit here, and I'm sure it has to be rather nerve-wracking. You've not done debates before yet, or interviews, and to have this be the first thing that comes out of the chute, and that you're willing to be so forthright and honest about mistakes, I think that says an awful lot about you as a person.
Thank you very much. And you know what? The key for it, there were mistakes, and there will be there are mistakes that will not be done again by me. I think the biggest part of it is that I've learned from them. And this is going to go out there. I know you guys got a wide audience, and I'm thankful for that, because
we are
really,
too.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, like I said before, I think it is when you run for public office, it is the voter's right to know a little bit about you. You know what I mean? And if you go on my back, I was young, no excuse, but I was. Like I said, I look back at it now and go, oh. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing what children will do for, how I've grown up with each one of my children. It's just amazing. It's just like another level. So I did it, and I'm sorry for doing it. I don't, I apologize. I paid full restitution to those involved, and now it's time to forge ahead, and this is the next step in my life.
Well, let's forge ahead into some issues. And I appreciate your candor in wanting to get that stuff out there. Downtown redevelopment has been in the news forever, it seems. And there are some real mixed feelings about it. You're either for it or you're against it. There's not a heck of a lot of middle of the road. What is your position, Joe Jungwirth, on downtown redevelopment?
Well. Downtown, you know what? I have a brother who owns a tavern down in the 200 block of Main Street. Mm-hmm. Nice place, great, love the neighborhood. Downtown redevelopment, in my eyes and in my mind, has to kind of almost like the smoking ordinance, these breathe free people want, if there's an outlet, if there's an outcry for a non-smoking establishment in this city, boy, I mean, someone's going to go do it. If 70% of the people you know, according to that, you know, wanted to have a no smoking, somebody should do that. And I feel that same way with downtown redevelopment. I really do. You've got to you've got to get the right people down there to make the downtown what it used to be, you know.
But should it all be done with taxpayer dollars, as it seems
No.
to be so far?
No, absolutely not. You know what the Leach family donated, that the amphitheater,
Band
you know,
shell,
or, yeah, you know, come. I think it's great. I really do. But we got to have something down there. And not on the we don't have the money in this city to be spending money on downtown. And like I said, I've got a brother who's got a business down there. Now his business is doing great, all right? But there's because there's not a tavern down in that area necessarily. You got one around the corner. You've got another one up the block, but. You've got to put something down there that are going to actually bring the people there, and not at the expense of the taxpayers. Absolutely not.
Can I just pursue this for one more second? You know, I appreciate what you're saying about the amphitheater or the band shell, but programming along the riverfront where there's a lot of drinking involved is not going to, as far as I can see, bring people downtown to support downtown. They're going to come down there to drink. They're not going to come down there to visit the shops. Hell, we don't have hardly any shops down there. What do we need to be doing then, Joe, about getting business merchants downtown?
I think what we need to do, and I think that amphitheater will bring something more than just our Thursday night rendezvous down there with the Waterfest. I think with that, you can bring in I don't know exactly what how it's going to be constructed, and if you can have other things there. I don't know that. I would love to see specialty shops down there. Now there are a lot of good shops down on Main Street, but there's nothing really there to pull. You know what I mean? Boy, it'd be nice to have a Walmart down there, or a Sears, we've got Kits and File down there, and thank God for them, because they do bring down a ton of people in that area. I think the amphitheater, you know what I really would like to see down there, and I remember this when Melanie, when you were on the council and Dad was on the council, that whole 100 block issue with the restaurant, the couple on the 100 block. I'm like, what? We don't need another darn restaurant down there. We don't. I would love to have seen a hockey rink, an ice rink, or something that's going to bring families down there, something that's going to bring more, you bring your niece, your nephew, your kids down there to enjoy, some recreation. I would, and I've read in the paper, and this is a few months ago, but the thought of having that time theater being brought back to have movies down there, whether it be specialty movies, they can play it all out at Cinema 10, but bringing in some nice old specialty movies and to bring some families down there and go from there. But I am not for spending taxpayer money down on Main Street at this point. The market will dictate that.
Well, the market's kind of been driven by the city of Oshkosh, unfortunately, to this point, because they have commissioned a study by LDR, which were the people who designed the whole downtown plan. And you make a good point. There's not really a draw. But LDR, who was the company who drew up the whole plan for how they perceive the downtown looking, said that the park where the sundial is located was going to be the there.
The sundial.
The sundial was supposed to be the big impetus for everybody flocking into the downtown, and we were going to have just oodles of people because it was going to be a pedestrian walkway and people frolly-lolly-lollying about, frolicking in the park by the sundial. That has not happened. I mean, you do see some people down there. They're usually taking a Mr. Bubble bath in the sundial.
Or a nap.
Or a nap on the granite seat that was taken care of. But my problem is that we talk about market driving things, and I do agree markets should drive things, Joe. I totally agree with that. But where the city has been in charge of expending taxpayers' dollars to drive a market that they want, and what they've done is they've said, okay, let's put a lot of apartments down here and let's get people down here. If you've noticed, there's an awful lot of vacancies in the apartments,
Absolutely.
even in the 100 block.
That was my next point. Yes.
Yeah, there's not a lot of storefront activity going on in the 100 block, which was promised to be happening.
There's no place for them to shop if they need
Exactly.
a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, what
Exactly.
have you.
There's nowhere for, okay, you bring all these people down, and one of the things that they wanted was pedestrian traffic, have people be able to walk. Where does one walk to the grocery store that's close to downtown? Where does one go to the drugstore that's close to downtown? There really is not, this hasn't been thought out thoroughly. And now we've moved the impetus to pedestrian traffic to the riverfront, and now we're building band shells because rich millionaires want to see their name up in lights. I don't know, but I'm just wondering, why didn't we just start at the riverfront? You know, if the water is, you know, we're Oshkosh on the water,
yeah.
that's a big thing. Why not start there and work our way back and see what developed off the waterfront and see if the there created itself?
That would have been nice. And unfortunately,
We were outvoted again, Joe.
that's right. Yeah, it just didn't happen. And I, you know, the Oshkosh on the water is exactly what we are. But when we have to pay to launch our boats, which, and I know the money goes and stays, you know, for all, you know, the upkeep on the launch, you know, on the decks and stuff like that. But I think we've just gotten away. We've just gotten away and just got, you know, spend. Oh, that didn't work. Well, now we're going to spend over here and do this. Now we're going to try and do that. You know, I would love just public comment. You know, I attend almost every council meeting since I decided to run. You know, with Channels 2 and Channels 10, they make it quite easy, though, to
Stay at
sit
home.
to sit. But with 3 children, I'd rather go to the council meeting. But it's just, you know, there's this whole outcry on this smoking ban, and there should be. Okay, there should be. I would love to see the council chambers packed like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like, and it's easy to do. Like I said, I know there are a ton of people that watch it on Channel 10, and thank God for Channel 10. But I'd like to see these people get up there, not just the Ken Benders of the world. You know what? I give him credit. You know, he is there. He is there. He is saying what is on his mind, whether he thinks the 7 people on that council think it's right or it's wrong. He is there. You know what? This city needs about 1,000 more Ken Benders, and really to get up there and voice your opinion, because maybe if that what you know if they were, then maybe things would have been different.
Exactly.
That's how I feel on that.
Well, speaking of city council, at a very recent city council meeting, Paul Esslinger had brought forward a letter that he read, and he wanted his fellow council members to sign it. It was a letter going to State Senator Cheryl Ressler and the 2 representatives in the legislature who oversee or supposed to represent the districts.
Good
here in-
qualifier, Cheryl.
Well, of course, because I don't think, as I said, they're doing their job. You know, Carol Owens and Greg Underheim. And it was simply inviting these folks, proposing to these folks, whatever semantics you want to use, asking these folks to start coming to periodic meetings and seeing what the city council does, keeping the city council apprised of what's happening in Madison that's going to ultimately affect us. And only 1 member of that city council would sign with Paul. The other 5, as far as I'm concerned, were derelict in their duty. What is your feeling about that letter? And if you were sitting on the city council, would you have signed it?
All right, I love that.
Nothing like a loaded question.
I
hey, Joe?
love that. I'm going to tell you, I was at that council meeting. I was sitting in the back room. I got there a little late, so I couldn't get in, you know, up front there. And being a candidate, I get the letters and everything.
whole packet?
The packet. I get the packet. on Fridays, and I read that letter, and I know Paul Essner. I've had many of conversation with Paul Essner, and I called him that next morning on that, and I just think it's it's kind of ironic that the only person that would have signed that letter was a person not present, Brian Peschel. I told Paul straight out that I would have signed that letter. I've been to these budget hearings. When we get cut $1.1 million in shared revenue, and now the city of Oshkosh has to cut 4.4% of the departments, I wouldn't mind, Greg Underheim or Ms. Ressler coming in and just updating us on that. And I think next year's budget's going to be a little worse. Yes, I would have signed that. And some of the comments that I heard that they were, it was harsh. I think I heard that, or I don't think it was harsh at all. I had the letter firsthand. And
they had all kinds of excuses,
Absolutely.
And they're purely and simply that, excuses. And we have quite a nice editorial, if I can pat ourselves on the back here, on our website about our feelings about them. But we only have a couple of minutes left. If you are elected to the City Council, what will you do for the people in the city?
I'll tell you, what I will do for the people of the city is what I can do for the good of the city. They're great with the tax rate being $10 per 1,000. Now I understand we're gonna, they're finishing up all the assessments on the houses. I'm frankly feed to death in the city. I mean, you have to have a fee for everything, and to me that is actually just another tax, and that's the bottom line. They're not. Yeah, well, we kept our rate at $10, and you know what they did? You know what? These departments took a 4.4%. They did it. Congratulations. Now I've got to pay to go down to Witzel Street and close Pollock Pool, and with the $1.1 million, I believe that's a figure that we got cut in state shared revenue. Maybe if we would have had a heads up on some of this stuff from Mr. Underheim and rest, to come in quarterly.
Yeah.
They live in town, correct?
Well, they're supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Come in quarterly, and I will do what I feel is right for the good of the city of Oshkosh. And you can't please everyone. Yeah, you can't. What?
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh. But that's what I want to do. I want to keep things in perspective, keep our spending down. I do think that sometimes we spend a little much because we really want this, we really want it, but I really want a Cadillac too. I really want a condo in Florida. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money to pay for that, and our debt service is something that needs to be looked at considerably.
All right. On that, our time is up. Why don't you just look right into camera 3, Joe, and in about 30, 45 seconds, tell the people why they should vote for you for Oshkosh City Council on Tuesday, April 6th.
Thank you. I would like you guys to vote for me on April 6th. It's for the council, because I will look out for the good of this city, and I will watch the spending. We don't need all this spending. We don't need all these fees. And we'll take care of you in the best fashion that I can.
All right. Do you have contact information where people can get a hold of you if they would like to?
If they would like to get a hold of me, my email address is Jungwirth, JUNGWIRTH @sbcglobal.net. My home telephone number is 231-8620.
All right. Thank you very much for being here, and
Thanks,
best
Joe.
of luck
Thank
to you
you.
on April 6th. And for everyone out there, please remember to go to the polls on Tuesday, April 6th. Exercise your constitutional privilege, and it is a privilege to vote. We're going to take a short 2-minute break. When we come back, Mel and I will do a very special short version of another Viewpoint. We'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Follow me, please.
Imagine what America would be like today if Martin Luther King never had a dream. Help keep the dream alive. To find out more about the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., call or log on now.
Oshkosh Community Access TV2 is your local sports channel. Follow your favorite Oshkosh teams each week as CATV2 presents the high school game of the week. Besides football and basketball, we feature soccer, gymnastics, swimming, wrestling, and volleyball. Sundays at 8, Mondays at noon, and Wednesdays at 8, CATV2 is the place to be for high school sports. The high school game of the week, here on Oshkosh Community Access TV2.
I want to
Have an impact.
make a difference. I want my voice to be heard.
Take matters into your own hands. Smack down your vote for the candidates who represent you and the issues you care about. Make time on Election Day to vote in elections in your community.
Have an impact.
Make a difference.
Let your voice be heard.
To learn more about the candidates where you live, contact the league in your state or community through lwv.org.
Smack down your vote on Election Day.
The Friends of OCAT is a nonprofit group that supports Oshkosh Community Access television programming and facilities. The Friends sponsor membership, underwriting, and fundraising projects. Their mission is to provide quality programming, to plan and implement fundraising activities, to develop a supportive membership, and to raise awareness of OCAT. If you would like to become a member and support Oshkosh Community Access Television, buy an OCAT card and enjoy discounts at many local businesses. Thanks for viewing OCAT.
Hi, and welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, Melanie Bloechl, my co-host, and boy, it is nice to have you back.
It's good to be
You've been
back.
gone for a number of shows, even though it hasn't really been that long. Because
Seemed
we
like
tape
it.
2 shows in a night,
Yeah.
you know, people have seen like a month's worth of shows, and you really weren't gone that long, and you weren't sick that long, and I had wonderful people, just absolutely great people, keeping your seat warm, but it's nice to have
Yes.
my partner back.
I want to thank everybody who stepped in to help me out while I was traveling for work, and then I had a little bout with pneumonia there,
And because you were gone for what seemed like almost forever, we thought we would do, because we haven't done another Viewpoint in a while, and this is an abbreviated version of that. But
yeah, I hope we can fire this off that fast.
we can do it.
Bing, bang, boom.
Mel, one of the first things I got to talk about, I mean, we're taping this on the 19th of February here, and you know, it'll probably be another week or 2 before this is shown, but the first thing I want to talk about is this February 17th school board primary. What in the world? I mean, first of all, Karen Bowen gets 4,610 votes, okay? Now, congratulations to all the people who survived the primary, but I was really shocked by this because Karen Bowen, only 10 months ago, was tossed out of office by the electorate, and she came in dead last in that election. And all of a sudden, 10 months later, in a primary, takes the top votes in top place. Unbelievable. But the others who survived the primary were Bob Bowman, Don Sween, and incumbent Teresa Thiel. Ann Rumbuck. Now, this is the woman who was running for school board. Some things come out in the paper that, you know, she was convicted of writing hot checks. She had a lot of civil problems going on. She had been convicted of stealing from her former employer 273 pounds of ham, 2 cases of cheese balls. Then she drops out of the race citing health problems. And of course, this went on while you were out of town. Drops out of the race, officially withdraws, and 2 nights ago, from when we tape this now, gets 1,112 votes. Who are these people, and what is wrong with them?
Well, I think those are the same people who no longer get the Northwestern. Well, I mean, I guess, bottom line, I think to try to put some sort of common sense, you know, covering on, you know, what do we see happening here and why would this gel out the way it does, that is really difficult to do in a presidential primary. I think that if you're looking at this, you have a lot of people coming out in a primary that would not normally come out in a general election because it is a presidential primary. The other thing is that you have a different kind of people coming out in a presidential election. I think you see much more of the university intellectual crowd that comes out, and maybe Karen Bowen is appealing to them because she's also an employee there.
Okay, well that explains Karen Bowen, but I don't think that
Maybe it's well, and I think where I was going with that is that, you know, if you do look at Ann Rumbuck and you think, how did she get 1,100 votes? I mean, how?
Because frankly, that's unheard of.
Well, it's an
situation
enormous
like
amount
that.
of votes for somebody who's not only pulled out, but under the circumstances that she's pulled out.
Has criminal convictions.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is that not enough people are paying attention to the school board race. I think that these people were on the ballot, and I don't think very many people were paying attention. I mean, I don't think a lot of people, if they're going to get all of their information from the League of Women Voters on these candidates, they're not ever going to know enough about these candidates to know who to support or why they're supporting them.
No, but she didn't even participate in the League of Women Voters debate.
But I mean, there's a greater responsibility to people than just watching the League of Women Voters for their information. I mean, people need to start making phone calls to these candidates and ask them, you know, what is your position on X, Y, Z? I mean, these are people who are going to formulate policies, formulate procedures, spend your tax dollars, and if you can give over 1,100 votes to somebody who obviously had some pretty serious issues, I'm a little concerned as to the education level and the attention span of some of the people that are voting.
Yeah, I'm concerned about their intellect. Another thing that is just, I'm chomping at the bit to talk about this.
Chomp, chomp.
The Common Council recently refused, the majority of the councilors, five of them, refused to sign a letter by Councilman Paul Esslinger that was also supported by and signed by Brian Peschel, the newest member to the council. And again, as we mentioned in the last half of this show that Joe Jungwirth, candidate for city council, was on, this was a letter that just simply went to state lawmakers saying, hey, you know, you guys in Madison are making decisions that affect us. Will you, you know, come to some meetings once in a while and see what we're dealing with and keep us apprised as a collective council as to what you're doing that affects us? And 5 of our council members, Frank Tower, Mayor Steve Hentz, Deputy Mayor Mark Harris, Bill Castle, Shirley Maddox, refused to sign that letter, all with a vast array of reasons as to why they didn't. Excuse after excuse after excuse. Blah, blah, blah. You guys, you failed us again. You didn't do your job. Shame on every single one of you. Who do you people think you are? You know, so many people have talked to us since this has happened.
Big
People
time.
are PO'd about this.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
And there is some talk about going after some of these counselors and starting a recall. And frankly, I'm all for it, and I think we ought to, you know, band together and get this organized.
Well, I think one of the elements that the threads that you hear that go through the conversation is that, you know, Paul Esslinger is up there pretty much by himself, and here this poor guy, all he did was send a letter stating, just as you said, you know, you're making decisions, you know, dealing with money and services, and, you know, I think the least you can do is actually show up and have some understanding of what our budget issues are. When I listened to council members explain or try to excuse why they wouldn't sign this, it went from, gee, the letter might be too caustic, and again, I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
It might be too edgy, too caustic. We have our own personal way of talking to the legislators. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the council, if you have been talking to the legislators, it's been in a deaf ear because they haven't heard you, they haven't shown up at the council meeting, and they still took the shared revenue, so you fee us to death. So, your conversations are of no use. Or maybe you haven't had them at all, or maybe the boat rides on the pontoon boats aren't being as successful as they used to be.
Well, and the thing is, if Mr. Underheim, for example, is talking to Councilman Castle, big deal. He's talking to him, but is Mr. Castle sharing that information with the rest of the council? Apparently he's not, because this council keeps getting blindsided on a lot of different things.
Well, I mean, Mr. Underheim basically came out and said that shared revenue was a non-starter. There was not going to be any issue with shared revenue. We had the governor tell everybody there was no issue with shared revenue. It was all just a big smoke screen. Burp, 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 burp. And we found out that they're all a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
And here we sit, and in the next budget cycle, it is going to be worse because there is nowhere left to cut, and you can't keep assessing fees for people for services that they've been paying for on the tax doles forever.
Yeah.
And really, these people should be ashamed of themselves. I think Paul has done a really good job.
Yes, he has.
The reason that I like Paul so much, not just as a person but as a council member, is because he's just got some chutzpah.
Yeah.
You know, the guy's got some real stones, and he's not afraid to stand up and say what he needs to and do it on our behalf and take the beating or the flogging publicly that he did from these council members. They tried to make him look foolish for, believe this, we should be inviting the legislators to come into the council
That was what
chambers.
Shirley Maddox had said, yes, we should invite them rather than propose that they come.
Well, first of all,
Well,
why the hell do we have to invite them? It's part of their
Right.
job to be here.
Right.
Nobody should have to invite you. It should be a prerequisite for the job. I mean, how do you know what's going on in your community if you never show up where the policies
Right.
and procedures are being done?
Right. Well, Mr. Underheim probably doesn't have time because he's so busy being down at the Oshkosh Northwestern office, you know, yucking it up with the paper boys
Could
down
you
there.
believe that Stu Rickman actually wrote an article about how Greg went down there all the time?
Schmoozing. Yeah, well, we wrote something on our website, too, about Mr. Rickman's column, and we've been getting a lot of nice comments on it.
Well, I just can't
you know,
believe
so-
that Stu Rickman thinks that schmoozing and gossiping is something that is pertinent to taxpayers' dollars being spent on Representative Greg Underheim. He seemed to think that this was perfectly okay.
Schmoozing and gossiping with the boys down at the Oshkosh Northwestern is not right.
not paying
and,
for him
and
to go
butt
down
kissing
there.
while everybody puckers up. That's not
How do you keep
good
your job?
public service.
That's how you keep your job as a legislator, and that's how you make sure that they continue to endorse you, is that you stick your orbital up an orifice as far as it'll go and pucker up.
Well, and,
That's how
and
he
yet,
keeps his job.
Yet they like Greg Underheim. They want to keep seeing him get reelected. They endorse him every time he runs, and yet they seem to have a problem with career politicians. Duh! What is wrong with this picture?
It depends on who the career politician
Once again,
is.
they speak out of both sides of their mouth, too.
Speak him with forked tongue.
Yeah. One other thing that I just wanted to mention, and speaking of the paper, is because this woman had written a letter to the editor. There was a gal here in town, a woman here in town, who signed a petition for, that has to do with the smoking ban. But after she signed the petition, and she signed the one for the restaurant owners, after she did that, and I suspect talked to some people, she realized that she had supposedly signed the wrong petition. She meant to sign the Breathe Free Oshkosh's petition and wanted to have her name pulled off the petition and this kind of thing. That didn't happen. It remained on the petition for the restaurant owners as it should.
She's probably one of the same ones that voted for Ann Rumba because she was.
Well, I don't know about that. But just because the actual ordinance that they're proposing wasn't attached, that was one of her things. Now I realize that's the law and it has to be done. And I wasn't there. I didn't see what she signed. I don't know if it was or wasn't attached. But I certainly am not foolish enough to believe that there was just a bunch of lines with people's signatures on them. What she signed had to have said something, and she obviously didn't read it. So if she didn't take the time to read what she was signing, as we're told time and time and time again, don't sign things that you're not reading, that's her problem.
She just bought a lake in Arizona. I'm sorry. Hello. Do you sign legal contracts? You're a little scary.
What's on your mind?
Well, I got to tell you, we've talked about the downtown redevelopment and the buying of the contaminated land and now building the superstructure, as we will like to call it.
The band shelter.
The band shelter, superstructure. I just found it interesting that we spent all this money buying contaminated property, And then the city very proudly proclaimed that they got additional brownfield dollars from the federal government.
$200,000.
$200,000 from the feds. And Jim Doyle was kind enough to sign them a big check in Fond du Lac for that $200,000 to do additional cleanup. Now, here's where the rub is for me, okay? Because I got to tell you, my butt cheeks are so chapped over this one, I cannot tell you. All right, so we buy the contaminated land for $900,000. Okay, Wisconsin Public Service kind of cleans it up, but not really. Then we go to the taxpayers again, granted federal taxes, but you and I are still paying for them, and they take $200,000 of our hard-earned money to give back to the city to continue to clean up property, which was already supposed to kind of be cleaned up by the people who contaminated it. Now, on top of adding insult to injury, the public service people who give us our gas and electric, our natural gas, have just raised our prices by 12.3%. Now, what I want to know is, what kind of unmitigated gall does that take? You contaminate our property, you use federal tax dollars to continue to clean it up, and then you turn around and jack up our rates. So you're gouging us on the federal end and taking our tax dollars, and then you come into our homes and jack up our natural gas prices and propane anywhere from 12.3% to 5%. We can't afford to, most of us are out of work. Those of us who are lucky enough to be working now have a government that is looking to take away overtime so we can't substantiate our livelihood because we're usually working 2 jobs. We have no health care, and the health care we do have is too expensive. And
Or it's insufficient.
Or it's insufficient. And now we have this. So let's see. Let's not eat, let's not clothe ourselves, and let's not be able to afford the heat in the house because our government is working so well for us. But hey, we got Greg down at the Northwestern talking about who he hates on the county board.
Yeah, and then when he goes home, talking to a couple county board members about reducing that size of the county board.
For more accountability. Hey, as soon as you let me pick how big the assembly gets and the Congress, no problem.
Mr. Underheim, if he's so concerned about accountability, he ought to look in the mirror. He ought to start coming to 215 Church Avenue to city council meetings and start doing his job, and then he can worry about accountability elsewhere. Until he can have his own accountability for his own actions,
right.
He needs to not worry about what anybody else is doing.
Well, and you know what I find really frustrating about all that is, you know, like I said, Paul Esslinger writes this letter. We talk about accountability all the time, and they like to write about the county board on a regular basis. There was not one word in the Northwestern about this letter that Paul wrote.
No.
And how people responded to it and why they responded the way they did. They are so busy protecting their chosen few, it's enough to make you irp.
Okay. What else is on your mind?
Well, the county board size.
Okay.
In principle, I think people should have the right to choose what size of government that they want. But I don't think it should just stop at the county board. I think this is a fantastic idea that Greg has come up with. But I want it to go further. I want to make sure that the assembly, we get to pick if they're going to be full-time legislators or if they actually have to go out and get a real job and not only work 3 days a week.
Oh, but we've heard from Carol Owens that 3 days a week, that's what's helping that's what helps keep the, you know, their salaries and
But
their
they're being
expenses.
paid full-time wages.
I know they
and
are.
benefits.
And their benefits are extremely good. What did she say when she was here a few months back? They're only paying like under $100 a month for their health insurance, are they not?
I don't
I mean,
remember.
it
She
was
saying so many other things that were just...
She said a lot and yet said nothing.
I don't, and I don't disagree. You know, I think Bill Wingren made a good point. I think people should have the right to determine if this is a good size or not a good size. But I do also share the concerns of some of the county board supervisors that when you hear Kathy Propp getting up in front of the county board supporting this, and Julie Pung Leschke, whose father also supported this, you definitely get the impression that the power players in Oshkosh want to have total control of the county board. And I think that that is very dangerous. Much as you have seen the school board, even though you have people in the town of Algoma, the town of Vinland, who support the Oshkosh public school system, you see predominantly Oshkosh people sitting on the Oshkosh school board. And I do think that there is some truth to those fears, that there are certain folks in the powerhouses in Oshkosh that would like to see that control given solely to the city of Oshkosh, or a great majority of it.
Well, I mean, personally, I think that the county board may be a little too big. You know, what that magical number is,
Yeah,
as
and
far as the
nobody
size,
has it.
I don't know, but I do think it's a little too big. And I do think that it is somewhat ineffective because of its size, because of these large numbers of committees that they have and that kind of thing. But again, I think that Mr. Underheim needs to worry about things that are going on in Madison. He needs to worry about this city, because this is what he represents. I realize the city is part of the county, but when he starts doing his job really well within the city,
Right.
and what he's doing in Madison that affects us, then maybe he can worry about what's going on in the rest of the county. But until that time, you know, focus on what you're supposed to be doing, Mr. Underheim. Do that well, and then worry about other things.
Set the example, and then maybe we'd listen.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
You've got all kinds of things.
I
there.
have
What
all
else-
kinds of
what
newspaper
else?
stuff, and I'm kind of rifling through some of these. You know,
Well,
it's
well,
just
while
like-
you're looking at what you wanted to talk about, I got to bring up just one thing, and this is a delicate issue because it's about Mr. Gordon Dooley, and now Gordon has a show, a local resident producer show here on Channel 2, and Gordon is just a sweetheart of a guy. You know, he's been around here forever, just a sweetheart. But you know, I'm feeling really badly for him because he keeps getting up in front of the city council talking about the same issues over and over and over again, and these folks are tuning him out. They have tuned him out for a very long time. They're not getting the message. They're not ever going to get the message. But I think, with all due respect to Mr. Dooley, I think part of the reason that they're not really listening is because the things that he's saying, I don't think are real issues. And road rage happens to be one of them. And Gordon, if you're watching, again, I don't mean any, you know, disrespect. It's not meant to be a personal attack, but you always say on your show that if people disagree, they should let you know, and I guess this is my way of letting you know. I disagree with you on this road rage issue. You know, he made a comment at the last council meeting, I believe it was, that he can't drive a block in this city without encountering road rage. But he's confusing poor driving habits with road rage. Running a stop sign is not road rage. Tailgating someone just because you don't know the proper length to leave behind, you know, someone else's vehicle or in between someone else's vehicle and your own vehicle, that is not road rage. Some of these things are not road rage. They're just bad driving habits that the police should probably be watching and taking some responsibility for. And I think that's what he's trying to do, but it's not road rage. If he's experiencing a lot of road rage, again, I don't mean any disrespect, but if he is experiencing that much road rage, then perhaps it is the way Gordon Dooley is driving. He sits on his show and boasts about how he just dares to drive in the left lane of Highway 41 going 65 miles an hour, and I understand that's the speed limit, but there may be some reason why people want to drive faster than that. And whether they're racing to get to a hospital, getting their pet to a vet, you know, late
Trying
for
to get
work,
around Gordon?
trying to get around Gordon, whatever their reasons, if they want to speed, that left lane is a passing lane. And if he's got people crawling up his pipe, maybe he just needs to move over to the right side of the highway and let these people pass. And then he wouldn't have all this road rage that he seems to be experiencing. And again, I don't mean to be picking on him, but I have heard this road rage so long. And it's all of this is not road rage. Go ahead.
No,
You're biting your tongue.
No, I'm not biting my
Do
tongue.
you disagree with me?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
well, I just didn't know because, you know, I wasn't sure if you were gonna bust out laughing, or
Well, I guess
or did I catch you off guard?
I think it was the crawling up your pipes comment
Oh.
that kind of caught me off guard.
Well, see, I've been
I'm
hanging
norm-
around you too long.
Well, careful. We'll probably get letters about that. Cheryl, run as fast as you can the other way quickly. I wanted to say a couple words too. While I was gone, we had some really nice co-hosts. Tony Palmieri, who was a very special co-host, Paul Esslinger, Tom Chelkoff,
Yes.
from the former assistant district attorney. And
Now
you
in-
did a marvelous job. I want to thank you because I know that this is not necessarily always very easy, timing and getting guests, and you do an awful lot of work even when I am here, so you did double duty when I wasn't. All the camera people and Mary Helen, who was busy switching folks, and I really appreciate everybody kind of pitching in and helping me and helping you and making it such a successful show. I also wanted to say hello to Joseph Sontag. He is home now.
Yes, he's one of our volunteers for people
Yes.
who are unaware. He had a serious health issue.
Yep.
Wasn't it right around Christmas time?
Just before.
Yeah, just before Christmas.
before.
And, we initially thought that he would probably not be with us for possibly a number of months. But he's just made tremendous
wonderful.
progress. And
We miss him and we love him.
Yes,
and we
we
want
do.
you to know that we're thinking about you.
And but we both coincidentally had talked to him the weekend before we're taping the show. You didn't know that I was going to call him. I didn't know that Mel was going to call him. Well, we knew that we would call, but we didn't know we were going to call like within 12 hours of each
that
other.
we're thinking this much alike sometimes.
And but he may be back to be able to join us sometime in the next month. So that's really wonderful.
We also lost a very good friend, Bob Kraus, former Winnebago County Sheriff, who passed away. And I want to send my very best to all his friends and family.
As
and,
do I.
He's a wonderful guy, and I had the privilege of knowing him and working with him when I was on the council. And he will be sorely missed.
Absolutely. We are just about out of time.
Zippity-doo-dah again. Holy cow.
See, these are the first shows that you're doing with this
These
half-hour
really quick
segment.
little,
and-
I feel like Quick Straw McGraw, you know.
But it's working out fine, and we're going to have to during the campaign season, we're going to have these 30-minute segments. Still be an hour-long show, but have to be divided into 2 30-minute segments, just because there are so many candidates
Right.
to get on the show that we would not be able to do an hour-long segment with each and every one. But
Make sure people write to us on our website.
yes, visit the website. Check out the community section of the website. We've got a poll on there right now. I just put it up, asking people how they feel that the Oshkosh Common Council is doing, and the couple people who have voted so far don't seem to think that the City Council is doing such a dandy job. So, there's some editorial pieces on there. The community section is a place where you can be interactive with us, and you can post things on there, things that are kind of, grinding at your heart and soul a little bit. So anyway, that's about it.
I've missed you guys.
Well, we missed you as well. We have got some school board members or candidates who will be coming up, and we'll have other candidates too. But for right now, we are out of time, so thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take good care.